Hear me now? So just a few anyway, but let's start. Great. Okay, so guys, my name, you know already, my name is John Paul. I'm the M&E technical specialist for South Europe. So I'm based in Spain, Barcelona. Today I'm just gonna give you, a few tips and tricks on how to optimize Arnold for, to do faster renders. I'm also going to be showing you just a few things that we got, some of the new things that we have now. But before that, I'd like to show the show reel. I don't know if you've seen the show reel, the latest show reel, which is the Arnold version 5. So I'm just gonna give it a run pretty quickly. So that's it. I'm gonna jump and I'm gonna do a live demo now. So I'm gonna just share my screen. Okay. Can we see the screen? All right, good. So, anyways, I'm gonna be showing you in this first scene just a little bit of how the way I like to work. The way I like to set up the render settings just for me to be a lot faster while I'm doing my look development. This, as you can see, this is a dreadnought. This was given to me by our senior technical specialist of North America, which is Marcel de Jong. Thank you very much for this incredible model. And now I'm just going to jump into my render settings. And when you open Arnold for the first time, what you see is you get your camera, AA sample, diffuse, and everything is set to this default, which is 32222. It's pretty high. I mean, for preview purposes. And if you go to your system, your bucket size, so it's set to 64. So bucket size doesn't really mean it's going to go faster or slower, but you get a faster IPR. So I'm just going to show you now what I mean. So it's going to open my Arnold render. As you can see, I have my dreadnought there, which is just basic lining. And you can see the bucket size is rendering, and as you know, it's doing just 64 pixels per bucket. So if I just turn that down a little bit, just to 16, and I hit render, it feels a lot faster now, but it is going at the same speed, but it feels a little bit more fluid in a way. So that I kind of love that you can do this. But then in the Arnold settings, I always like to do, a minimum settings for samples, so I just always going to keep my samples, AA samples to 2 and the rest all to 1. So that also helps me, go be a lot faster. So another thing that I always do is just save this stuff as a preset. So just gonna stop this for a second and just save it. So save it as a JSON file, and you can give it a name. I always use it as the start point, so I just save that as a start point, which I already have, and then you can just go and load that preset here. So I have my start point here, so I'm just gonna load that one, and you can see just loads pretty quickly, and you can see how fast and responsive that is. So it feels a lot faster to me, and it helps me, visualize what I'm doing. Another thing that I like to do is just keep my test resolution to say, you can either do it to fit the window size, which is probably the best option, or you can just do, set it to 50 or 75. But while you're working, maybe you don't need that much resolution, so you can, keep it to very minimum. So all you want to see is, is the type of lighting that you're getting, the lighting contribution, anyways. So that's pretty much for this part. So that's just wanted to show how I like to set my samples here. So I'm just gonna now go and open a different file, which is the advanced shading and how to use the debug modes while you're doing some advanced shading networks. Okay. So I think this is it. All right. So I got my settings already there, and just for a second, I'm just gonna go to my node editor, and I'm gonna show you what I have here. So it's not really too complex of a shading network, but it's got a lot of nice things here. So basically, I have a couple of shaders, and I connected these to our new AI mix shader, which is part of the latest release. So now we have more than 70, almost 80 new utility shaders that you can use. Also, one of them is the new AI facing ratio. So now you don't have to use the sample, the older one, the sample ratio one, or facing ratio. So this is good enough now. So what I did was just created a noise, and I plugged it into this AI thin film, just to get some nice, specular reflections. Then I connected that to my specular color, and then I have another shader here, which is this mix shader, and I connected this ramp with the facing ratio. So the best way to see this stuff is always just to, if I hit my render here, my preview, you can see I'm getting a nice result here. So, but I want to see what each one of them is doing. So all I need to do in this case is go to the debug modes, which you can find here on this menu here. So if you go to toolbars, you can find it under here, show debug shading icon, or you can also go here and do the debug shading, like you see here, and just do isolate selected. So I'm gonna hit play, and I can see exactly what each one of them are doing. So in this case, I can preview my noise, and I can adjust it on the go. So I change things like the amplitude, for example, to whatever I want, and I get an immediate feedback. So that's really nice to have. Same thing here. You can see I can preview my AI thin film. I can see my shader. So I'm just gonna adjust this window so it doesn't get in the way. There you go. Then I can see what my ramp is also doing, and I can adjust that. So what I've done is I just connected this facing ratio to the V ramp, to the V coordinate of that ramp. So basically, that way, it just basically it gets adjusted depending on your camera angle. So that would give me that typical, like, double paint, the typical paint that changes depending on the angle that you see it, which is a really nice effect. Then I have another shader, another mix shader there, and then I can see my final input, my final result. So if I just go here back to this and I do the disable, I can see my whole thing, and I can see the effect I'm getting. But it's really nice for for you to see exactly what you're doing, what each one of these shaders are doing. Also, having this option here is to me priceless. Like back in the day, it was a very different workflow while you were setting your shaders. The way it was. It was very difficult, and you kind of have to, it was a little bit of a guesswork sometimes, but not anymore. Not with Arnold. Um, so I'm not sure. I'm just gonna check back into if I can. Let me see if I can do that. No. Um, okay. I'll be check. I guess I would have to stop the sharing and see if you have any questions or anything. So I'm not sure how to get there. I'm sorry. It's the very first webinar I'm doing. So anyways, I'm just gonna stop this particular scene now, this render, and I just want to go to the next one. So basically, I'm just showing you, the very good things about Arnold. Just gonna go and open. If it doesn't crash on me, which I think it is. There you go. Okay. So one thing that I also like to do, and I would like to mention, is how fast now we've updated the way we create the TX manager. So now it's multi-threaded. So let me see if I can see these guys. Okay, I cannot see my textures. They're not there yet. So I need to go and maybe find them. So I just need to maybe reconnect these textures. Just give me a second. Sorry, I had it on a different computer. So I'm just gonna go to my file path editor. So I have all of this. There you go. So I need to repath. So there should be source images. There you go. No, not here. There you go. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So now when you hit render, if you go in here into your render options, and I think it's actually here, textures, we have the auto convert texture to TX, but now it's got really fast. So if you're doing local renders, I would advise you to keep it on because it's really fast. You see now I have I think it's up to 21 4K textures now, and if I just go and hit render, you can see how fast it's converting them, and they're really heavy. Like 4K textures, each one of them is really heavy. So you see how fast it is. So that's nice. And once you've done that, if you close that, you don't have to really convert them again. It just goes like this, and it's really fast. Okay. But say you guys now you're working on your productions, or you already have your textures logged and approved by the director, and everything's fine. I would always advise you just to go and do this process. Once you have it, just use just the TX files. So you can obviously always go to your utilities, and under utilities you have the TX manager. So you can just basically just go and find your texture folder and just select it and just do all your textures. Just create your textures, and then just use your TX files. So don't use your JPEGs or your TIFFs. Just your TX files always, because it's a much better workflow. You'll be sure you won't be getting any errors from the render farms. I mean, it's just the best. It's the safest way to do it when you're rendering. So this is it for this. I'd just like to show you some of the light changes in Arnold. So now we've got a few changes in the lights, especially the area light. So in this one, I don't need the texture, so let's not reconnect that again. So what I want to do is just want to show you what's new. So when you hit render now, We got a couple of new things. For instance, one of them, we don't have the decay drop down menu anymore, so it's always going to be quadratic. But we now have the roundness and the soft edge. So if I just do a little bit of this, if I change this, let me hit play and bring this here. You can see what's happening. It's basically making it rounder. So it's very nice to have that option there. So obviously you could do this with a cylinder, but it's always going to be a total cylinder. It's also going to change the intensity. But in here you can control it, very nicely. And then if you just want to have a soft edge, that's it. You just add a little bit of this, and you got now a little bit of a softer edge. And that's also a very nice feature there. I hope you guys are seeing this. All right, let me see. Let's go in the project scale. Okay, the project scale will obviously, yes, you want to have a real world scale. So that's gonna make Arnold, behave a lot better. Okay, sorry I didn't see that message before. Okay, so yeah, that's very important. So now I just wanted to show you this feature here because these are the more obvious ones. So now I'm just gonna jump into a different scene, and I want to show you a little bit of the render overrides, to know how we work with them. Because a lot of people really doesn't know about this, and this is a really neat feature in Arnold. So the render overrides is you find yourself doing this a lot. You know the way you have your render stats, and maybe you want to have that object to not cast any shadows, or maybe not receive any shadows, so you don't want it to be visible to the camera and that sort of thing. But before we had to kind of either do it with the for-in loop or a script, or maybe you could use the render setup to do this stuff. But with Arnold, you also have what we call the sets, or the Arnold overrides. So all you need to do is just select all of them, which I already done. So you select all of the cars or dreadnoughts like this, and just go and create. And you create a new set here. Give it whatever name you want. So I already created one and call it cars. And if you go to the Arnold tab here in the attribute editor, under extra attributes, you see I already added all of these stuff. But all you need to do is just go here, add, and find the stuff you want to add. So in this case, I already added like AI visibility in specular reflections. I added to cast shadows, render smooth levels, all of this stuff. And then you see, once you do that, you can create as many sets as you like, and it will work very nicely. So if I hit render, then I can do, and let me go back to that. Okay. Then I can say, for example, just turn off my primary visibility to all of them, and all I get is the shadows, or maybe I just want to see the reflections, and then I get the reflections, or just the shadows, that way. This is very typical in the production, which you want to have on a particular pass. You just want to have just the shadows, and then you want to render your character on a separate pass, and the shadows on a separate pass, and the background in a different pass, so on and so forth. So it's really nice to have these sets here, but you can do a lot of stuff with the sets. It's not just for this. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with them. You can use sets for shaders. You can use sets for a lot of other things. But anyways, I think I make the point here. Yeah, if you have any questions, just anything that would you like to see, just let me know. I have a bunch of scenes that I prepare for this, but I'm just basically going through the most typical things that I find myself doing during production. So again, I'm just gonna open a different scene now. This one is it's gonna be rendering curves. So okay, so I with the Dreadnought, I just extracted a few curves using the Tune utility, and there's a couple of ways you can approach this. So you can either select all of your curves, So select all of them, and then just go to your Arnold and use the curve collector. That's one way. So if I just click on that, what it does, it's just going to create this shape here, or this node, and it's going to add all of the curves to it, and it will give you all of these different attributes. So we'll give you the mode, the width, and then you have this one, which is really nice, which is a width profile, which you can change, and then you can basically plug in a shader or change the sample rate. So what I did for this one, I just connected a shader, this one here, and then I used the presets. So on the presets, I used the incandescent bulb. So which is this one here. If you didn't know about this, I'm really sorry. I guess I should mention it. There's a bunch of presets here that you can use as a really good starting point. So you have balloon, blood, brush metals, car paint. I mean, loads of them. So I would really advise you to use this as a really good starting point, because you have pretty much all of the basics here. So if I now hit render, you can see I'm gonna be seeing my curves, no problem. So I'm just gonna add my debug 3D and debug thing here. Okay. So there you go. So that's really straightforward, but that's not the only way. Because for some things, you might say you might want to treat them individually, or having a different sets or whatever. I'm just gonna close that, and I'm gonna hide this for a second. Did I? No, actually, I hit the wrong button. So I'm just gonna hide that one. So and I'm gonna do a new set. So you're gonna start from scratch on this one. So I'm gonna go do sets, create a new set, and I'm gonna call this one Dreadnought. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Nice work, same in Cinema 4. Yes, if you're talking about the way you render curves, to be honest, I'm not sure how it works in Cinema 4D. I would have to check about that, but I'm not really a Cinema 4D user. Sorry about that one. But anyways, once you create the this thing, you can add your stuff. So you can see I have all of my stuff here. I have AI curve shader, I have my curve width, AI opaque, I have my mode, render curve, sample rate. These pretty much are the basic ones that I want to use. And then the width, I think I already have it selected. Yeah, so I just do the add, and then I can just basically I want to make sure that this is on, and if I'm gonna have some some sort of opacity, I need to make sure that's off. So I untick the opaque one. Then I can change my type here, or the curve width or the sample rate. But then I can connect the shader here the same way. So I'm just gonna really quickly connect a simple AI standard surface, and I'm gonna connect that incandescent bulb. So now if I hit render, this is what I get from scratch. So all I need to do now is to start tweaking my my curve width. So as I adjust this, you can see I get a really fast feedback from the IPI render. Really nice and fast. So if you were rendering, say, for example, a fur or hair or whatever that you say you imported from ZBrush or any other package, this is the way you would collect all of them curves and then render them, because by default they just won't render in Arnold. So you have to do these overrides and add all of these extra attributes so it works. It's either that or again just use the curve collector. So I'm gonna move on from this file, because I have something very interesting that I want to show you. But before we get to there, so I want to show you one by one. But at the end, so don't go away, because at the end I want to show you how you can speed up the render times by a lot. This is the most important one, by faking some of the indirect lights and not using any indirect bounces at all. So, but first let me move on into the stand-ins. So stand-ins are basically just procedural objects like OBJs, but they're very highly optimized to render with Arnold. So how do we use them? So how do we create a stand-in? Basically, all we need to do is just select the object, go to Arnold, and then we just export this guy as a stand-in. But when we do, there's a bunch of things that we need to check. So here you have, for example, your export option. So say you were exporting this with lights and cameras and stuff like that, or maybe you have you want to force some shading engines that are being translated, or export all shading groups, stuff like that. I always like to tick on these ones. But you can also export the sequence. So if this object was animated, you could also export it as a sequence. So but bear in mind when you do, we're just going to go through each frame and it's going to export one AS file for each one of them. So it gets exported as an AS file, as you see here. So that's pretty much it. You see you got your options, include options, they're all grayed out in this particular case. So you can also compress it, but that's pretty much it. All I need to do now is just save it as an AS file. So I have it here, which is my dreadnought.as. So I'm just gonna replace it because I already have it. So all I need to do is just hide this one or delete it from your scene if you don't need it in there, and then just create a new stand-in. So when you do, and you go grab your AS file, it comes in, and by default it'll show up as a bounding box. So you see, one thing that I should mention: if this was an animation, you would get like a numerical sign here, and then in order for this to work, you would have to type the expression equals frame in this case, and just hit enter. So that way, see, it will go through each one of the AS files and will play your animation smoothly. So in this case, I don't need it, so I'm just going to leave it as there, just frame one or whatever. And one thing that is very nice is that say you have these, objects and you need some characters to interact with them, then you can also change the way they draw on the viewport. So you can choose a polywire, you can use a wireframe, you can use point clouds. So you can see here, you can do shaded polywire or just shaded. So that's actually, and it's still very fast and responsive. So I can move this in a very responsive way. And trust me, this is a very dense object. So there's a lot of polygons in this one. So now the most challenging part now, I just want to take this guy and I want to copy it across, like maybe do 1,000 copies of them. And when I say 1,000, I mean 1,000. So it's going to do loads of them. Oops. Okay, sorry. Let's start again with failing this time. So let's do that. So I'm going to copy that, move it here, and do loads of copies, like loads of copies. Do the same for this on that direction, and loads of copies. And lastly, up to the top, let's do a bunch of them as well. So I don't know how many I do have here. Let's say, yeah, almost 1,000. So 882 dreadnoughts in this scene now. So I'm just gonna hit render. You'll see how fast Arnold just goes through this. Okay, but first let me change my resolution size to 100. Okay, these guys are rendering. Yes, let me stop this for a second. And I think I need a light. That's why I can't see them. I need a light. So I had a light. Okay, no worries. So let's create a light. So for this one, just I do sky dome. And one thing you should know, these things are infinite. You don't really need them there. So if they're just getting in the way, all you need to do is just go into this kite radius and change that to 0. So you don't really need to see it. So now I'm just gonna hit play. You can see I got all of my dreadnoughts. You can see how fast that renders. And so one of the things I love about Arnold is that it can handle a lot of geometry really nicely. I mean, the more you give it, the better it works. and that's something that I really appreciate. Okay, does it require more RAM for rendering more stand-ins? Um, to be honest, Maddie, I guess if you would require a certain amount of RAM, but this is mostly CPU, not really graphic RAM, not graphic RAM or memory RAM, not at all. But this is just all handled by the CPU. So Arnold is a CPU render, doesn't really use any graphic memory, and but you do need a little bit of random memory, like regular memory, for this to work. I think on this particular computer I have 64 gigs of RAM, but I've done these type of things with just 16, so I guess 16 would be plenty, in this particular scenario. And the CPU in this case I have it Xeon 8 cores. That's what I have on this one, just 8 cores. That's pretty much it. So it's very basic. Really, the CPU is not really too beefy. Okay. So now I'm just gonna move into something that's also new, which is the rendering of the Open VDB file. So now in Maya, in Arnold, we got a new shader. So go scenes, data, and there you go. Okay, so there's my file now. All right. So let me see if this renders. Okay. So there you go. So there's the fluid. So I just want to open now my node editor, and it kind of makes me laugh, like how simple it is to set this up. So all you need to do is basically, in order to create this, all you need to do is basically come to here, hit the volume collector, and then just go and grab your default, or your VDB file. And then you have your typical setup here. So whenever you export this type of data, it comes with this information. It comes with things like density, heat, temperature, fuels, so on and so forth. So in this particular one, I'm just going to be using the density, which is all I want. And then all I need to do is just select that fluid and apply an AI standard volume. So it's just pretty much there. So it's just do that. And once you have it selected like this, just go and do assign to selection, and that's pretty much it. So when you go there to the shader, it will give you all these things like, and let me move these, all right. Density. So in this case, what I've done, I've connected. Why is this yellow? It's because I created the new utility, which is named volume sample RGB. And with this, I get some extra control. So I can change gammas, I can change contrast, exposure, multiply, and add. I'm not really changing the hue, saturation, and contrast pivot. And you see that's why I blocked it, because it's not influencing this particular sample here. So it's just pretty much like all I need to do is just select any of these channels and connect it into the density. Which is here. Then I just need to tell this guy that the channel we're using is density, and then I can start changing my shader. So all I get from this shader is this volume. Then I have scatter. Then I have transparency, emission, and temperature. So in this particular case, I'm not using temperature. That's when you're setting up bombs and stuff like that, or fire. But all I did was, just change. If you follow some of the, the documentation in the website, you see, this is one of the samples. You just change the color here, and you can see what's up. So now I just connected the other one. I think I connected the other shader, so I'm just gonna connect this one back. So that's what you get when you just connect the AI standard volume by default. So that's the way it looks like the other one there. So if I wanted to change this stuff, all I need to do is just basically just come here and change the color, adjust the weight, do whatever I want. But in this one here is the one that really is gonna give me the the look of it. So if I change things, for example, like the exposure, this is what's going to do for me. It's going to make it a lot, say smoother in a way, more transparent. Um, so I can adjust all of these things. I can make it even more dense, more like, volcanic kind of smoke, that sort of thing. So you can adjust all of these stuff here. So it's the same with the gamma, So, but all of them give you different results. So if I adjust the contrast like this, and it add up like that, it looks more like it's kind of underwater, that type of effect. But you can appreciate how fast it goes, when rendering volumes now, it's extremely fast and nice, especially with Arnold. But anyways, if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so it's gonna close this one. I know Maddie, Carlos, I know you're typing something there. So if it's about rendering volumes, you probably can come back to this. So now I just want to, go about, the fireflies. So is Mantra Arnold better for rendering volumes? I would love to say Arnold would be better for rendering volumes than Mantra. It's going to be a lot faster anyway. I don't know better, but faster, I'm sure. But to be honest with you, I haven't tried the latest version of Mantra, so I've got the latest version of Houdini, but I haven't rendered anything. So it might be faster. It might be faster now, but I wouldn't be able to tell. I just know with Arnold it's super fast, and so I'm not sure. But anyways, I set up your typical, Fireflies case here. So if I'm gonna hit render here, you'll see I got a lot of fireflies all over the place. So when that happens, normally when you have very reflective objects and maybe you have the lights intersecting, but in this case, why is this causing this huge fireflies? It's because of the index of refraction. I just on purpose made it very, very strong. So that's on the code, I think, on the other one. Yeah, so I made the index of refraction set to 3 and the other one set to 10 just to get these incredible amounts of fireflies. I am a 3 years max user. I'm trying to use Arnold. Where could I find some tutorials for Max? Well, I'm pretty sure if there's not tutorials for Arnold on the Solid Angle website, I'm sure they should be posting them anytime soon anyway. But if trust me in this, I've never used Max with Arnold before, and I was an FMX last week, and by any chance I just had the opportunity to see one. I opened it, and it was really straightforward to use. I think the way Max is very easy to use is like it was very intuitive for me. I mean, just even assigning shaders and all that stuff, changing the light exposure intensity and all of that was really easy for me. But anyways, just to go back to this, I'm just going to show you normally the way you would approach this in this case, right? You might want to use what we call a AI ray switch. So if I go to no editor, you see I've already done this and I'm still getting all of the fireflies. But that's because of this extreme setup that I have here in the IOR. So the way this works is just basically you need to take one of the shaders and take all the specular information down to 0, and that gets connected into the diffuse and the specular channels of your ray types, and then the other one will get connected to the rest, to the camera, shadows, so on and so forth. But sometimes in this particular case, and this is why I'm showing you this one, because I thought you might already, saw the other cases, and they're pretty straightforward to solve. But this one's kind of hard. So in this case, the only way you can approach this, and is if you go to Arnold settings here, But we have what we call the clamping. So clamping of the values. So that's in this particular case, not even if you, so sometimes you get fireflies also when a light is, maybe, cutting through an object, that sort of thing. And that would be very simple to solve by just coming to the light, when that sort of things are happening, or maybe the light's too close to the object, and you can also fix that by just using a light decay. But in this case, that's not gonna work because this is not being caused by that. It's not. It's not. It's because of the high, very high index of refraction that I have set up there. So even if I do this, nothing's gonna happen. I'm just gonna basically it's not gonna do anything anyway. So what I need to do in this case is just go grab my values. And I'm just gonna isolate this area here just for a second. I'm just gonna do a marquee region, which is this guy here. And you see I have a bunch of fireflies there. So all I need to do is just grab the max value in this particular guy here. Just gonna set that to 1, and that's already helping by a lot. And then when you start seeing it this way, that if you can increase your camera AA samples, and that's gonna clean it up completely then for you. So that's the best way to approach these type of fireflies. So when nothing really works, when the ray switch doesn't work, and you're unsure which one of the shaders are causing this, or maybe it's not a shader, maybe something else, always go into your clamping and clamp your values, set that to 1, and then you can tweak your, all of the rest, and that always gonna fix your fireflies. So that's really nice about Arnold. Also, you can see how do you find out where these guys are coming from. In this particular case, I don't really care because they can only come from 2 sources. They can either come from your specular reflections or your diffuse indirect bounces. So when I go into my AUV tab here, what I did was I added, the indirect diffuse, indirect specular, so I could see exactly where these guys was coming from. So, these particular fireflies, and then I can just go into this particular menu, drop down menu, and I can see, I can isolate each one of them, and it's pretty obvious that these guys coming from the indirect diffuse bounces. Because if I go to this indirect specular, I'm not really seeing much, only on the ground, only in the actual reflections is where I'm getting these fireflies. So. And that's why I kind of knew, okay, maybe I need to use the ray switch, but since that didn't work, okay, then I just go to my clamping menu and just gonna set that to 1, and if one doesn't work, the other will. And see, okay, is possible high physical sky for the light in HDR? Somebody just asked me that before. Is possible to have physical sky for the light? Yes, you can do a lot of the stuff. Okay, I'll get to that later. But basically, when you create a light here, sky dome, for example, you can connect that. You can have multiple sky domes. You can have sky dome and have that particular sky dome to be visible to the camera, but do not do any reflection. So if I turn this down like this, whatever image that I have plugged in here, so any colors, let me go find an IBL, for example. And I don't know, I just do 2D texture. I'm gonna do file, and I'm gonna go find my IBL. I should have one here. That one. No, what's the HDR? There you go. That's the HDR. Okay. So this is gonna be in the camera, but it's not gonna be in the reflections. And where's my sky dome? Sorry. Sky dome light. There you go. So it's here. All of this stuff you set to 0. And just a second. As you can see, it's there, but it's not really contributing to any diffuse information or any specular information. And as I start to add some diffuse, specular, I start getting information from that HDR. So basically, I can have one HDR just to do my reflections or diffuse contribution, and then another HDR just for a different background or whatever. If you want to use it as a background, I tend not to use the backgrounds for that. The HDRs, I only use them for reflections, and get some lighting information from them. Okay. I hope that answers the questions. I guess I hope I got that on. I understood that well. Um, all right, cool. I'm happy. All right, so now I'm just gonna get to the part that I really care about. It's just, I've been hearing a lot of things from people like, rendering with Arnold interior scenes are very expensive and very heavy. Yes, there's a lot of ways to reducing the noise in post. And I love to use there's a lot of plugins, but I love to use the one that comes in Nuke. Although if you're on After Effects, I believe there's the one that was developed by the same people who do the what's the name of that one? RMS Motion Blur or something like that. I can't remember the name of that. But there's a few. Sapphire has one, which is really good. There's a lot of them that be really good. I mean, you can reduce a lot of the noise, and I can show you. There's one scene which I have here, which I want to show you if we get the time how you can do this. But in this particular scene here, which you are seeing here, is the dreadnoughts. And there was a lot of noise on this scene, so I basically used some filters and to finish cleaning it up. But yeah, it is possible to do it, and you'll find yourself doing that a lot anyway. So, but if you set up your renders correctly with Arnold, you won't have to. It's that's just in a very extreme case in which you have to save a lot of money, you have to keep your samples very low, that sort of thing. Then you can rely on those sort of plugins. But anyways, I want to show you this particular example here. This is one I downloaded from the Solid Angle website, because a lot of people say, since Arnold is not a bilinear render, it doesn't calculate from different sources, just a camera. It only shoots rays from the camera, so it tends to be a lot slower. When calculating indirect bounces and stuff like that. Now in this particular version, it's got a lot faster and a lot better. It's a lot less noisy now as well. I mean, the new algorithm is really clean now. When you render, you get a lot less noise, and it's a lot faster. But still, I just want to show you. I'm just gonna go and hide all of these rooms. So originally, when I got this scene, all I got with this scene was these three lights and this sunlight, which is just a directional light. So I'm just gonna go to this render cam, and I'm gonna go to the settings, and I think I had this back to, yeah, I guess that should be it. Maybe 10 and 3 for the A, 10 for the diffuse. There's no specular reflections there really, so I don't need that. So if I hit render, this is the result I get. So I get a lot of really nice bounces. I have 3 indirect bounces. There's a lot of really nice information here. Indirect bounces coming from the light. But this particular render took 14 minutes to render. And 40 minutes is a lot of time, and for some productions, maybe if you're working on a feature film, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you're working in TV productions like I was, you might have only like 10 minutes per frame as your maximum just to render. Your director won't let you have like 30 minutes to 2 hours per frame renders. That's just impossible. There's no budget for that. So I'm just gonna stop this for a second. And what I want to do is gonna go to my ray depth, and I want to turn this ray depth diffuse back to 0 and the specular back to 0. I'm gonna grab a snapshot pretty quickly, and I'm gonna hit render. And what's gonna happen, this is gonna render the whole thing like in maybe 9 seconds or something like that. So you can appreciate how much faster it goes, but obviously there's no indirect bounces, there's nothing there, which obviously doesn't make it look as nice. But the way we used to do it back in the day, and when I'm saying back in the day, I'm talking about maybe 10 years ago, and even nowadays, we're not sometimes allowed to use indirect bounces or any of that because it's too heavy to render. So I'm just gonna grab another snapshot and I'll show you the workflow we had back then. It was pretty much basically just drawing. If you understand lighting correctly, I'm just gonna go to my perspective now. Um, when this light is shooting a ray, what's going to happen is it's gonna create a bounce. So that bounce coming from all over the place. It's going to come from the ground, it's going to come from the walls, it's going to come from the roof and everywhere. So what it did was it's just I'm gonna unhide light by light. So it had one bounce coming from this particular direction for this guy. I had another bounce for this other guy, another bounce for this other guy. And then I have started, creating different bounces with different intensities. I will show you that now. So different lights, different intensities. But when I did that, I find myself in the need of having to connect, an ambient occlusion node to the diffuse channel of my shader. So as a way to solve some of the context shadows that I wasn't getting that you would normally get from the indirect lighting or an IBL, that sort of illumination that works really nice. So the workflow is just to connect an ambient occlusion node into your diffuse channel, and then you could connect. If that was a texture, I could connect any texture into the white channel here. I connect any texture to this and then leave this to black, or obviously black will be the color of your shadow. So now what I'm gonna do is just gonna go back to this and I'm gonna hit render. One thing I know is not gonna be super physically accurate, but I'm still getting a really nice result from it. So this is the render that's gonna take 49 seconds instead of 13 minutes. So which is still on budget. And it looks pretty decent. You can see the difference. This is the one right now with the indirect bounces that took 14 minutes, and this is the one with just the fake lights. So what I want to show you is the final renders, which I have saved here. So on the advanced Faking Indirect bounces. Okay. So you can see this is the one that took. It took 12 minutes 24 seconds actually. So that's the one. And then this is the one that took 49 seconds. And you can see it's pretty similar. I mean, you can tell if you are very, if you're a trained guy, you're trained to see this stuff, you'll be able to see it. But for most production, this doesn't really matter. Especially if you're doing things like cartoons for kids, or I mean, you could even fake it for a real production for whatever you're doing. And you can see the differences. I mean, this one's getting more light, obviously. This one's a bit more shadowy in this part, but it's very, very similar. And at the cost of, if you think about it, this took 12 minutes and this one took 49 seconds. This just for me, just the way to go, just the way to do it. But anyways, do you have any questions about this? Okay, so I guess I don't really have any more scenes to show. I think we already done the full hour. So I'm just gonna okay, I'm just gonna stop sharing the screen. All right. That's cool. And anyways, I guess that's it for today. I wish I had a lot more time because there's a lot of things to see. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with Arnold. I can show you with Arnold. But anyways, I'm gonna be posting a lot of videos, and there's a new channel I have, which is Autodesk World in YouTube. But definitely go check Lee Griggs' stuff because he's incredible. His renders, his work, his tutorials. There's a lot for us to learn from him. And anyway, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube as well on the Autodesk channel. So anyways, if you have any questions, just let me know. You can see On this side, we have some nice and useful web links, if you want to take note of that. You are welcome. Okay. Thank you, Marcel. I love your models. It's they're pretty good. They're amazing. All right. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you again next time. All right. Have a great day, everyone.